Bombshell tonight. Nolan Wells audio distress call. Is it real? Good evening. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. I want to thank you for being with us.
Everyone in the background is saying, "Is he dead? Nolan, wake the f up."
Claiming they're sinking and calling for help. And yet in the background, are we really hearing all of this other activity?
Nobody has ever, none of the kids on this boat have ever admitted that anybody said that they thought Nolan was dead.
Detail Assistance, Vicky speaking. How can I help you?
Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can y'all please come? We have a membership.
All right, of course. How far is the water coming up, sir? Can you give me a description? Ankles?
What'd
Hello?
you say? Hey,
Yes. How far is the water coming up, sir?
it's coming up. We're just sinking. I don't know. Like we're going down now.
All right. Well, let's get you going. Membership number or phone number listed on the account, sir.
I don't know the phone number. It's either. I think it's. Try that.
All right.
I know we have a membership, like guaranteed. I don't
All
have
right.
the tag
Unless
on
you
here.
have a
It got ripped
membership
off.
number or anything, it's okay. I'll get you over to the captain. What's the best phone number to reach you at?
This your boy Gerald with the NC Beat. I want to know why Crooked Cop Tatum deleted his tweet to a question about whether or not the photo and video that he posted last week showing this Triton boat that Nolan took out to Horn Island, but according to them, they want us to believe that he was not on the boat as they were going back in when whatever happened to him happened to him. And I want to show y'all this so y'all can see how they are trying to cover this up. And I honestly believe that Tatum is also trying to help this Geico lizard who you see right here, Warren Hudson, with this, what seems like to us, a cover up about what really happened to Nolan Wells. I've been so busy with my site. These screenshots are from when I took them at the time these things were made, or I found out about them, but I never wrote about them at the time because I was over here busy, y'all. Okay, but I'm back. But look at this. Tatum says, breaking. Exclusive images shared of the Triton boat being towed by another boat after viral Sea-Tow dispatch call. Nolan Wells is confirmed not to be on board. These images were taken from the boat towing them. So this boat that is towing them is barked. As you can see, these are the photos that Crooked Cop Tatum posted. Here's the video that Crooked Cop Tatum put up on social media to try to make us believe that Nolan was not on this boat. Apparently, this is from July 4th. When Tatum had posted these photos and videos, someone asked him before or after the call. He says after the call.
On the 4th of July, 2026, an 18-year-old college football player boarded a boat with friends in southern Mississippi. He was headed 10 miles offshore to a barrier island where hundreds of young people had gathered to celebrate Independence Day. He arrived smiling, standing taller than everyone around him, his arm casually slung over the shoulders of the people he had known since high school. By nightfall, he had not returned. 2 days later, his body was found floating face down in the water near the same island where he had been celebrating just hours earlier. His name was Nolan Xavier Wells, and the circumstances surrounding what happened to him between the moment he stepped onto that island and the moment his body was recovered remain, as of tonight, officially undetermined. This is everything we know so far. Every confirmed detail, every contested claim, every unanswered question that continues to push this case further into the national spotlight with each passing week. If you believe cases like this deserve careful, fact-based coverage, without sensationalism, hit that subscribe button and leave a like for DAV Crime Records. It helps this channel continue doing exactly this kind of work. Nolan Wells grew up in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, a small coastal city roughly 79% white according to the latest census data. He was a 2025 graduate of Ocean Springs High School, where he had been a multi-sport athlete and a standout on the football field. His head coach, Jake Bramlett, later remembered him publicly, saying Nolan carried himself with humility, treated others with respect, worked hard, and led by example. Bramlett said his character spoke louder than his accomplishments, and that he was loved deeply by teammates and coaches alike. His high school principal, Dr. Jacob Dykes, said Nolan made a lasting impact on everyone around him. These were not eulogies crafted for the cameras. They were descriptions of a young man people genuinely admired long before his name became a headline. After graduating, Nolan enrolled at Southwest Mississippi Community College, where he earned a roster spot as a freshman wide receiver on the Bears football team. He stood 6 feet 1 inch tall, weighed approximately 185 pounds, and was majoring in general business. According to his college's athletics page, his parent is listed as Christine Wells, and he had 5 siblings: Elmore, Ethan, Jalen, Jaden, and Carly. His father, Elmore Wansley, described him on national television as a silent leader, not a big talker, more action than words, somebody his teammates looked to without him ever having to ask for it. His mother, Christine Wansley, said her son was a bright light whose smile and energy were infectious. She called him the kindest soul, someone who loved everyone and never met a stranger. By the summer of 2026, Nolan had already completed his first college football season and was preparing to return for another year. Summer workouts had begun. His father said this 4th of July weekend was supposed to be his last stretch of freedom before training camp resumed. It was meant to be a final day of fun before the discipline of the season took over. Instead, it became the last day anyone saw him alive. Horn Island sits roughly 10 miles off the Mississippi Gulf Coast in the Gulf of Mexico. It is a federally protected barrier island managed by the National Park Service, and according to the agency itself, there is no staff, no drinking water, no shelter, no facilities, and no communication infrastructure on the island. It is only accessible by private boat. There are no docks, no lifeguards, no emergency services stationed on shore. For most of the year, it is little more than a strip of sand and scrubland, surrounded by open water. But on the 4th of July, it transforms. Hundreds of people, many of them young, many of them former classmates from nearby coastal towns, converge on the island by boat to celebrate the holiday. In 2026, the gathering at the western tip of Horn Island drew an estimated 300 people. That is the setting into which Nolan Wells disappeared. GPS data obtained from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources shows that the boat departed from the southern shore of Mississippi at 9:56 in the morning on July 4th. It arrived at the western tip of Horn Island at 11:14. On board were Nolan and a group of high school friends. Photos taken that day, later circulated widely on social media, showed the group together on the boat. Nolan appeared to be the only black person aboard, though at least one other black friend was also part of the broader group on the island that day. In those photos, he towered above his companions, grinning, visibly relaxed. Nothing in any image taken that morning suggested anything other than a group of young people heading out for a holiday. What happened over the next several hours on that island is where the story fractures. According to the Jackson County Sheriff's Department, Nolan was last seen around 3 in the afternoon on July 4th. At some point during the afternoon, the boat Nolan had traveled on began experiencing mechanical trouble. The bilge pump, the device responsible for removing water from the hull, stopped functioning. Water reportedly began entering the vessel. Around 4 in the afternoon, a member of the group placed a call to Sea Tow, a private marine towing service. That call has since been released by the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources and has become one of the most scrutinized pieces of evidence in the entire case. In the recording, a young male caller tells the Sea Tow dispatcher that they are at the west tip of Horn Island and that their bilge pump has stopped working. He tells her they are sinking and asks for help. The dispatcher asks how far the water has come up inside the vessel. He responds that it is coming up and that they are going down. She asks whether everyone on board is in good health. He confirms that everyone is on board. He tells her there are roughly 7 people aboard, that none of them are over 21, and that there are no children. He requests to have the boat, in his own word, unsank and towed back. During that call, background commotion and multiple voices can be heard behind the caller. What those voices are saying has become one of the most intensely debated elements of this case. Some listeners, and at least one major media outlet that published what it described as an enhanced version of the audio, have claimed that a female voice can be heard in the background asking whether Nolan is dead. Others have claimed to hear someone saying his name, along with phrases that would suggest he was in physical distress on the vessel. None of the friends who were on the boat that day have publicly acknowledged hearing or making any such statements. And critically, a digital forensics expert who examined the enhanced recording found that it ran 20 seconds longer than the original and carried an entirely different digital fingerprint, meaning the version being treated as clear evidence by many online commentators does not match the source file released by the state agency. That distinction matters enormously, and it has not been resolved. What is confirmed is the sequence of events that followed the call. According to accounts given by the group, a friend aboard a separate boat, identified as Bart, pulled alongside the struggling Triton and towed it a short distance away from the crowded area near the island. The sea tow call was ultimately canceled. The sea tow captain told the dispatcher that he had already contacted the caller's grandfather, who confirmed the situation had been handled. Sea tow never dispatched a vessel. The group's account, as relayed through interviews and public statements, is that Nolan was not on the boat when it left the island. According to Warren Hudson, one of the friends who later spoke publicly on a podcast, Nolan chose to stay behind on Horn Island with a girl he had met that day. Hudson said it was not that they abandoned him, but that Nolan made a decision to remain on the island and planned to catch a ride back to the mainland with another group. Judge Ashley Cole, who is the mother of one of the young men last seen with Nolan, posted a public statement saying her son had been interviewed by the Jackson County Sheriff's Department and cooperated fully. She stated that Warren saw Nolan last around 3 in the afternoon, that the group departed around 4:30 when the boat began taking on water, and that Nolan made a decision to stay and return with another group of friends. Nolan's parents have publicly stated, clearly and repeatedly, that they do not believe their son would have voluntarily separated from his group. His stepfather, Elmore Wansley, told Good Morning America that he could not fathom why Nolan would have done that. The family has pointed to a principle Elmore said he instilled in his son from a young age. If you go with a group, you stay with the group. If you go out with 5, you come back with 5. He said Nolan always answered yes sir to that rule, which is exactly why the family cannot understand how he came to be alone on that island. The family did not hear from Nolan that evening. He did not text, call, or post on social media, all of which, according to his stepfather, were things he routinely did after returning from previous trips to Horn Island. Instead, around 11 at night, Christine Wansley received a call from one of Nolan's friends, informing her that her son had not come back. She attempted to track his phone. When a friend later retrieved the device, the family said they discovered that messages had been deleted from it. Around midnight, Christine contacted the Jackson County Sheriff's Office to report her son missing. The search began on July 5th. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department coordinated with the United States Coast Guard and the United Cajun Navy, a volunteer search and rescue organization that joined the effort after Christine reached out to them directly. Drones were deployed by the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. A press release issued that afternoon described the missing person as an 18-year-old black male, approximately 6'1", weighing 180 pounds, last seen wearing blue swim trunks, no shirt, and sunglasses. The search covered more than 40 hours. On the morning of July 6th, a National Park Service ranger found a body on the northwestern shore of Horn Island at approximately 8:45 in the morning. The body was face down in the water near the shoreline. Dental records later confirmed it was Nolan Xavier Wells. The Jackson County coroner, Bruce Lind, confirmed the identification publicly. In the immediate aftermath, Jackson County Sheriff John Ledbetter stated that investigators did not suspect foul play. He said there was no information at that time to suggest a crime had occurred. That early determination drew intense scrutiny, particularly from Nolan's family and the attorneys who would soon represent them. The family hired Benjamin Crump, one of the most prominent civil rights attorneys in the country, who announced that his team would conduct an independent investigation. Crump stated publicly that there were glaring contradictions in the accounts given by the friends who were with Nolan that day. 2 autopsies were performed on Nolan's body. The first was conducted by the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office on July 7th. Those results, including the official cause and manner of death, have not been publicly released. Officials have stated they are awaiting toxicology results and that findings will not be disclosed until a grand jury has reviewed all the evidence. The second autopsy was an independent examination arranged by Crump's legal team and funded by former NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick. It was performed on July 10th by Dr. Roger Mitchell Jr., a board-certified forensic pathologist who serves as president of the National Medical Association, the oldest and largest organization of black physicians in the United States. The results of that independent autopsy were announced on July 22nd at the 117th National Convention in Chicago. The findings were preliminary and, by the pathologist's own description, incomplete. Dr. Mitchell ruled Nolan's cause and manner of death as undetermined pending further investigation. He identified red discoloration in the soft tissue at the back of Nolan's head, though no lacerations or fractures were found in that area. The significance of that discoloration remained inconclusive due to extensive decomposition. Perhaps most critically, Mitchell documented several limitations that he said created barriers to establishing a definitive conclusion. The most significant, in his own words, was the inability to directly observe the airway and lungs for water and to directly observe the stomach for gastric contents. He also noted that he did not receive Nolan's internal neck structures, including the trachea, which he described as being of utmost importance to determining a cause and manner of death. No toxicology results were included in the independent report. Attorney Crump read directly from the pathologist's findings at the press conference, including one sentence that landed with particular weight. The pathologist stated that he could not rule out whether any intervening non-accidental factors contributed to or caused the death of Nolan Wells. Crump followed that by telling the assembled press and the Wells family that they still had more questions than answers. In the weeks following Nolan's death, a reward fund was established for information leading to an arrest and conviction in connection with the case. The Reverend Al Sharpton contributed $50,000. Actor and producer Tyler Perry matched that amount after watching a live stream of Nolan's memorial service. Former NFL wide receiver Terrell Owens added an additional $25,000, bringing the total to $125,000. Nolan was laid to rest on July 20th at Center Point Church in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. Reverend Sharpton delivered the eulogy, during which he spoke of inconsistencies and unanswered questions. Nolan's parents stood on stage beside Sharpton and Crump and thanked God for the 18 years they had with their son. They remembered his discipline, his perseverance, his humor, and his kindness. Christine Wansley told the gathering through tears that they would miss everything about him. Meanwhile, the father of Warren Hudson, Ben Hudson, has publicly stated that his family intends to pursue legal action against Benjamin Crump, alleging defamation and slander. He said Crump has falsely accused his son and his friends of murder and has pursued what he described as an obvious false narrative. That legal response has not yet materialized in court filings as of this recording, but it signals the depth of the divide between the two families at the center of this case. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department has repeatedly emphasized that the investigation remains active and ongoing. Detectives have stated they are continuing to review digital evidence, witness interviews, and information submitted by the public. They have specifically asked for original, unedited photos and videos taken on July 4th, particularly those depicting alleged altercations or containing images of Nolan Wells. Authorities have also confirmed they are investigating online reports of an alleged physical altercation on the island that day, and whether it involved Nolan. As of tonight, no charges have been filed. No official cause of death has been released. The state autopsy results remain sealed pending grand jury review. The toxicology findings that could answer some of the loudest questions circulating online have not been made public. The central question remains exactly what it was on the night of July 4th, when Christine Wansley first called the sheriff's office to report that her son had not come home. How did Nolan Xavier Wells, an 18-year-old athlete in the prime of his life, surrounded by hundreds of people on a holiday afternoon, end up dead in the water off a barrier island 10 miles from shore, with no one claiming to have seen what happened? That is the question this case has always been about. Everything else, the audio, the autopsies, the public statements, the accusations, the defenses, all of it orbits that single, unresolved fact. There is a moment in almost every unresolved case where the facts stop growing and the questions start multiplying. In the case of Nolan Xavier Wells, that moment arrived not with a single revelation, but with a sequence of contradictions that began stacking against each other so precisely that even the people defending the simplest explanation started reaching for their own reward money. And that, of all the things that have happened in this case over the past several weeks, may be the detail that tells you the most about where this investigation actually stands right now. Before we go any further, if you are watching this for the first time and you care about cases like this being covered with precision and without shortcuts, this is the channel that does that work. Subscribe to DAV Crime Records and leave a like on this video. It keeps this coverage going, and it keeps it honest. When we left off in part 1, we had established the confirmed foundation of what happened on July 4th, 2026. Nolan Wells traveled to Horn Island with a group of friends. The boat experienced a mechanical failure involving the bilge pump. The group left the island around 4:30 in the afternoon. Nolan was not with them when they returned. His body was found in the water off the island's northwestern shore on the morning of July 6th. 2 autopsies were conducted. The official cause and manner of death remains unreleased pending toxicology results and grand jury review. The independent autopsy commissioned by the family ruled his death as undetermined pending further investigation. That is the confirmed foundation. Everything that follows in this part of the coverage concerns the specific points of contradiction that have emerged in the weeks since. The forensic details that continue to generate serious debate among credentialed experts, and the financial actions taken by people on both sides of this case that suggest, regardless of which version of events you believe, almost nobody involved actually thinks this story is finished. Start with the person Nolan's own family and community have consistently described as his closest friend. Javon Williams gave an interview to CNN in his own name, on the record, and what he said directly contradicts the account the rest of the friend group has offered to investigators and the public. The Marine Patrol report confirmed that several friends told investigators Nolan had chosen to stay behind with an unknown woman and intended to return to the mainland with a different group. Javon Williams told CNN that account does not match the person he knew. He said he has never known Nolan to stay back while his friends left. He described it as a consistent and unbroken pattern across years of friendship. If Nolan went out with a group, he came back with that group. Every time, no exceptions. That is not an emotional reaction to grief, though grief is present in everything surrounding this case. It is a specific, testable claim about a documented pattern of behavior from someone who says he watched that pattern repeat itself without deviation for years. And it carries more evidentiary weight than most of what has circulated online in this case, precisely because of who it comes from. This is Nolan's best friend. He has no obvious incentive to complicate the story if he believed the simple version was true. What makes his account particularly significant is that he has simultaneously gone on record saying he does not believe this case is primarily about race. That is a position that cuts against a major current running through the public conversation around this case, and one that carried real social risk to say out loud, given how charged the debate has become. He took that position publicly anyway, which is exactly why the other half of what he said deserves the same weight. Even as he declined to frame this as a racial incident, He has maintained that the specific details around how Nolan ended up separated from his phone and his keys do not add up to him. A person who pushes back on the racial framing while simultaneously refusing to accept the friend group's own explanation for how Nolan was left behind cannot easily be accused of chasing any particular agenda. He is occupying the most difficult position in this entire case, someone on the inside who is genuinely unconvinced and who has no theory of his own to sell. Nolan's stepfather, Elmore Wansley, has echoed the same core sentiment independently. He said on national television that the family cannot fathom why Nolan would have separated from his group, that they raised him specifically to stay with the people he came with, and that Nolan always honored that rule without exception. Two people who knew Nolan closely, his father and the friend he grew up alongside, saying the same thing independently of each other without coordinating their language, is not proof of what happened. But it is a specific category of evidence. People who actually knew this young man, who watched him make decisions in real time across years, both saying the same thing. This doesn't match who we knew him to be. To be fair to the other side of this, as this coverage has always tried to be, people do things once that don't align with their established pattern. A holiday afternoon, a girl he had just met, a decision made in a moment of spontaneity rather than deliberate choice. None of that is impossible simply because it was out of character. But when the people telling you it's out of character are the ones who spent years actually watching that character develop and hold, that testimony carries real and specific weight, more than anonymous claims, more than secondhand accounts, more than anything that has gone viral in this case and hasn't been independently verified. Now, one of the most scrutinized elements of the entire case beyond the autopsy findings is the CTO dispatch recording, and it is worth addressing one more time with the same precision this channel has applied from the beginning. The recording released by the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, not obtained from social media, not an enhanced or altered version, but the original file released by the state agency itself, captures a young male caller telling the dispatcher their bilge pump has failed, that water is entering the boat, and that they need assistance. During that call, background voices and commotion are audible behind the caller. What those voices say has become one of the most debated points in the entire public discussion of this case. Brandon Tatum, a former police officer with the Tucson Police Department who has interviewed multiple friends connected to this case and has appeared on national television discussing it, offered his assessment of that audio on Crime Stories with Nancy Grace. His position, stated directly, is that it is impossible within the established context for anyone on that boat to have been calling out Nolan's name in distress or asking whether he was dead, because according to the accounts he gathered from the friends themselves, Nolan was not on the boat when the call was made. He added that people had already reported seeing Nolan on the island after the group departed, including a young woman named Katie. He stated that he personally reviewed a text message from her, suggesting she never saw Nolan board the boat. He argued that any phrase listeners believe they hear on the recording must be understood within the context of a group of people on a sinking vessel, where comments about what is or is not dead could plausibly refer to the boat's mechanical systems rather than to a person. Trial lawyer John Mobley, appearing in the same broadcast, challenged one of Tatum's underlying assumptions, specifically the idea that the presence of hundreds of people on and around the island that day would have guaranteed witnesses to any significant event involving Nolan. Mobley stated plainly that crimes happen in crowded places all the time without anyone seeing them. He referenced a case he personally handled involving a child thrown from an upper level of the Mall of America, a public space crowded with shoppers. Almost no one saw it happen in real time. His argument is that crowds do not create coverage, they create noise, and noise is not the same as observation. Nancy Grace herself reinforced a question that has remained unanswered across every version of this case, regardless of which side you find more credible. Even knowing the lungs were removed during the state autopsy to assess for water consistent with drowning, she pressed forensics professor and death investigator Joe Scott Morgan, directly on why the throat, meaning the organs of the neck, were also removed and retained by the state medical examiner while not accompanying the bodies sent to the independent pathologist. Morgan's response was substantive. He explained that the organs of the neck, including the larynx, the pharynx, and the trachea, are the pathway through which air reaches the lungs, and that examining those structures allows investigators to assess whether breathing was compromised before or during whatever event led to death. He stated that forensic investigators are specifically looking for any focal areas of hemorrhage, any evidence of compression or crushing, anything that might indicate the airway was interfered with. He described the removal of those structures as standard practice in cases of this nature, not unusual or suspicious in isolation, but explicitly stated that those organs carry potential evidentiary and probative value in cases that may require future legal proceedings. That last phrase is important. Probative value means material that could be used to prove something in a court of law. The state medical examiner retained those structures under conditions suggesting they may matter later. That is not a finding. It is not a determination, but it is a deliberate forensic decision made by a credentialed state official that sits uncomfortably next to the conclusion that this case is straightforwardly resolved. The second autopsy, conducted by Dr. Roger Mitchell Jr., which was funded by former NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick and commissioned by attorney Benjamin Crump on behalf of the family, specifically flagged a finding in the soft tissue at the back of Nolan's head. Dr. Mitchell documented red discoloration in that area and noted that the region had undergone a multi-layered dissection not performed during the state examination. He found that the discoloration had what he described as defined margins rather than being diffuse across the tissue, which in forensic pathology suggests the possibility of a patterned finding rather than random decomposition change. Joe Scott Morgan, commenting on that specific finding during the Nancy Grace broadcast, described the margin nature of the discoloration as something that raises specific questions, noting that defined margins in soft tissue findings prompt investigators to consider whether a patterned object or surface was involved. However, and this is where the honest account of that finding has to include everything the pathologist actually said, and not just the portion that generates the most alarm, Dr. Mitchell himself noted significant limitations in his ability to interpret that finding. He cited extensive decomposition as a barrier to drawing a firm conclusion. He explicitly ruled the cause and manner of death as undetermined pending further investigation. He was not able to directly observe the airway or assess the lungs for water presence because he did not receive the throat structures, which remained with the state. His own findings, taken in full, are a document of what cannot yet be determined, as much as they are a document of what was observed. That is not an argument for dismissing what he found. It is an argument for holding it at exactly the weight a credentialed forensic pathologist himself assigned to it, which is significant enough to require more investigation rather than conclusive enough to support any final determination. This is the same principle that applies to every contested piece of evidence in this case. The audio, the boat footage, the timeline of the sea tow call, the phone, the deleted messages. None of them, taken individually or even collectively, resolve what happened to Nolan Wells. Each one raises a question that requires the next piece of the investigation to answer. Which brings us to the reward, and why even the financial structure of this case tells you something important about where the people closest to it actually believe things stand. The total reward currently on offer for information leading to an arrest and conviction in connection with Nolan's death has reached $175,000. The Reverend Al Sharpton contributed $50,000. Actor and producer Tyler Perry matched that amount. Former NFL wide receiver Terrell Owens contributed $25,000. Those contributions came from public figures with no direct personal connection to either the Wells family or the friend group. The contribution that generated the most discussion came from a different direction entirely. Dr. Benjamin Hudson, the father of Warren Hudson, one of the young men who was on the boat that day, and who has been one of the most publicly scrutinized figures in this case, offered $50,000 of his own money toward that same reward. The question that immediately followed from multiple commentators was direct. If the official working theory has been that Nolan drowned accidentally, why does a drowning require a reward for information leading to an arrest? A drowning is not the kind of event you offer a tip line for. It is the kind of event you investigate with forensic tools, not cash incentives for witnesses to come forward. That confusion is fair, and it deserves a serious answer rather than a dismissive one. Reward money in cases like this one is not exclusively a tool for confirmed homicide investigations. It is commonly deployed in any case where investigators believe relevant witnesses are present but not yet speaking voluntarily. In this specific case, that is not a hypothetical condition. There were an estimated 300 people on and around Horn Island on July 4th. There is a confirmed gap in the documented timeline between the last confirmed sighting of Nolan alive, around 3 in the afternoon, and the departure of the boat at approximately 4:30. There are accounts of an alleged physical altercation on the island that day that authorities have stated they are actively investigating. A reward does not require the offering party to believe a murder occurred. It requires them to believe someone with relevant knowledge has not yet shared it and might do so for financial motivation if other motivations have not proven sufficient. That said, the source of Dr. Hudson's contribution specifically is worth examining honestly rather than passing over. This is not a stranger or an advocacy organization with no personal stake in the outcome. This is the father of one of the young men whose name has been circulating online in connection with theories about what happened to Nolan. If Dr. Hudson believed his son had something to conceal, offering a large reward aimed at bringing the complete and accurate timeline into the open would be among the last strategies he would pursue. Answers in a case this contested cut in every direction. They could implicate someone. They could also fully exonerate someone. The most straightforward reading of that contribution is that a father who has watched his son face serious public accusations has decided the fastest path to clearing his son's name is not continued silence. It is money on the table, specifically designed to accelerate whatever truthful account is still sitting unshared by someone who was present that day. Separate from the reward fund entirely is the $100,000 contribution made by entertainment executive Byron Allen to the family's independent investigation fund, as publicly acknowledged by attorney Benjamin Crump. That money, by Crump's own description, is not a reward for tips. It is specifically designated to fund the independent experts the family has retained, including the forensic pathologists, the audio analysts, and the oceanic engineers, who have been examining elements of this case that the official investigation has not publicly addressed. The distinction between an investigation fund and a reward fund is meaningful. Conflating them creates a picture that is more inflammatory than accurate. One pays credentialed professionals to examine existing evidence. The other creates a financial incentive for witnesses who have not yet spoken to do so. Both funds exist for the same underlying reason. The people closest to Nolan Wells, and now at least one of the people closest to the friend group under scrutiny, have concluded that the standard pace and scope of the official investigation has not produced the clarity this case requires. That is not a statement about guilt or innocence. It is a statement about process and momentum, and it is reflected in the behavior of people on both sides of the divide at the center of this case. Nolan Xavier Wells was 18 years old. He had just completed his first year of college football. He had spoken with a coach on that island sometime between 2:45 and 3:30 that afternoon about his plans, his future, and his life. Hours later, he was gone. Months later, the official determination of how he died has still not been released. 2 autopsies have been completed, and neither one has closed the question. An independent pathologist ruled his death undetermined. The state's findings are sealed. Organs retained from his body carry what a credentialed forensic expert has described as probative value for future legal proceedings. The people who were with him that day have given accounts that Nolan's own best friend and his own father have said do not match who Nolan was. and the total reward money now on the table for answers has reached $175,000, including from the family of one of the young men whose account remains publicly disputed. That is not a closed case. That is a case with more open doors than it had the week it began, and more financial weight behind the push to walk through them than at any point since the search for Nolan first started. The official toxicology results have not been released. The grand jury review is ongoing. No charges have been filed. Every person connected to this case who has spoken publicly has maintained their account. And Nolan's mother, Christine Wansley, has continued to speak, continued to ask, and continued to say plainly what she has said from the beginning. Her son would not have stayed behind. She raised a young man who came home, and he did not come home. That fact, above every contested detail in this case, is the only one that has never been disputed by anyone on any side of this story. We will continue tracking every new development as it is confirmed, and we will hold every claim to the same standard we have applied throughout this entire series. Confirmed, kept separate from claimed. If this coverage matters to you, subscribe to DAV Crime Records and leave a like on this video. Every subscription and every like tells the algorithm that this kind of careful, fact-first true crime coverage belongs in front of more people. We will see you on the next one.